Hello, everyone, and welcome. Going to give just a second to make sure everyone gets in, and we will get going. So, hi, I am Megan Kavinsky. I am the CEO of Point to Point, and I'm super excited to be joined by a special guest today.
I am Randy with Spark Your Brain.
Hello, Randy.
Hello, Megan.
Yeah. So Randy and I have a great relationship because we both own agencies that are in the building materials space, but we do very different things. And Randy really focuses on merchandising and point of purchase for building materials and other industries that sell into big box retailers. So whenever I talk to Randy, I learned so much, and I thought that everyone here would benefit from the conversation today too. So hopefully you have some questions that you'd like to have us answer or hear us discuss. If so, just put those in the chat and we'll get to them along the way or save some time at the end. But what I really wanted to talk to Randy about were really three things. Want to talk about what's going on in the aisle in big box merchandising. What is on the mind of merchants right now? Like, what are the kinds of conversations in the environment that merchant conversations should be happening in? And then the third is sustainability, because we've both seen in our businesses over the last year where sustainability has gone from something that was sort of no one's really willing to pay for it, or it's sort of a nice to have but not a mandatory, to something that's very real and present. So Randy, I think we should get started maybe on the merchant, because the merchant's really key to all of that. So what is on the mind of the merchant? Tell me about the conversations that you and your team are having.
Sure. The conversations that we're having with our team and with our customers and with merchants is the merchants are focusing on a few things. How can we as a merchant increase margin? How can we increase our inventory turns? And how do we obviously increase top line? And some of the things that we can help you with in all three of those things is, how do you get your product to create more inventory turns? Well, does your product solve any untapped demand? How do you get your customer to see your product and purchase your product on the shelf? And how do you add value? How is your product adding value to the merchant, so he or she can get more inventory turns, more top line, more value? Those are some of the things that really what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. So I think inventory turns is an interesting thing to maybe talk a little bit more deeply about,
Sure.
Because earlier in the year, there was a lot of conversation about big box retailers and Home Depot in particular holding on to a lot of inventory, having over purchased due to the supply chain crisis that went on last year. And then things sort of slowing down and not moving as quickly. I mean, certainly the economy's been strong, but maybe
Sure.
not as much. So what's going on within inventory turns right now?
Sure. So things that are happening with inventory turns, and as a manufacturer who is selling a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Menards or someone else in the building material space, there are things that you need to put into your retail pitch deck that can help with those things. Some of those things would be, how do you refine and how do you bring your packaging to life to create those inventory turns? How do you make your packaging a merchandising vehicle on the shelf that can create more inventory turns, which actually helps solve some untapped demand that the merchants are looking for? Those things are really, really important that can bring your packaging to life, bring top line, bring those things that the merchant are really looking for. And really, actually, case in point, we just had an example with a client where the client came to us and we helped them with 19 SKUs. They had an opportunity to get all these products in store. We did the packaging, the merchandising, the retail pitch deck for them, actually wrapped some product video in for them. And out of the 19 SKUs, they ended up getting 12 SKUs on the shelf. It's a pretty good deal.
That is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
We've been seeing that happen more with our clients too, where they're going in and being able to get more in the aisle. And some of it, I think, is driven by some evolution, particularly really in the Home Depot business model, moving to more flatbed distribution sites where the retail locations can operate almost like a showroom with like just-in-time inventory coming from close, large distribution centers. So are you seeing that where that's creating more space in the aisle because there's less inventory there?
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. Some of the significant changes that we're seeing at retail with merchandising would be possibly, instead of how do you use the store shelf or how are you using your existing planogram as a place to keep inventory, right? So maybe retail is bringing in less, selling and using the store as a warehouse to create inventory turns and bringing in less product. So bringing in a pallet worth of product, putting that on the shelf, and the rest of the product goes in the warehouse or actually in the store, so they're not having the warehouse delivered to them, so they have product so they can get just in time. So using the store to hold stock as the warehouse is one of the ways that we have found from our experience that is happening.
Okay, so similar, yeah.
Yeah, and then other things that are significant changes that we're finding at retail with the merchant is house brands. Sometimes you can get house brands on the shelf. Sometimes you're competing with yourself because you're manufacturing the house brand, but your brand is on the shelf. And, merchants would like to use brands to help people navigate to that category to ultimately maybe buy the house brand.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much that's gone on, building materials and otherwise. There's really become this proliferation of house brands, and it's a growth engine and a growth strategy for a lot of people. So how do you process that if you are now essentially in competition as a manufacturer with someone that used to only be a distributor? What do you do to respond? How does that impact your relationship with your merchant?
Yeah, well, there's many different ways. You can wrap things that you have online, and you can wrap things in store and make them consistent with your brand. Sometimes the retailer is taking their house brand and wrapping it to in-store, like I said, to get that category sale up. And really what they're looking for is to get that category above and get increased sales. Cross merchandising, but online and in-store and cross merchandising are two things that we have found from our experience that are really getting a lot of thoughts in play right now.
So I'm curious about how, with the merchant and they're such skilled negotiators, and have so much training, and they are, all the language that you've been speaking so far about, like inventory turns, top line revenue. I mean, they're not marketers, they're talking about finance and sales figures and things like that, more operationally driven. So you're sitting across from a merchant and they have a house brand. You may or may not be the manufacturer of it. And are you able to go direct to the end user better because they have the house brand there? Does that add a negotiating lever, or what do you do to respond?
Yeah, some of the trends that we're finding are direct to consumer, as you just mentioned, and I think what retail has started to see is some of the manufacturers have a branded product and they're going direct to consumer. So retailers and merchants are saying, okay, we need a house brand, so possibly we can go direct to the consumer as well. And just total case in point, we have a client that is selling Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards and some other people in the building materials space, and they're really wrapping their online digital experience and the in-store together. And at the end of the day, they have a direct-to-consumer outlet as well to increase that top line.
Okay. Yeah, I think that in-store and online and, the connectedness of the experience, like what are the best practices or ways to make sure that what you're doing, like whether it's in a digital aisle or in a physical aisle, that you create connectivity?
Yeah, so some of the things that we're doing, and our team knows this, and from our experience with our customers, is before the pandemic, sometimes or many times the e-commerce platform and things that were in store were not consistent, right? But a lot of the changes that we have found regarding retail merchandising and what the merchants are requiring is, how do you make online and in-store consistent and make that creative consistent and the promotions consistent, the campaign consistent? So that consistency to get this top line.
One of the other things that you mentioned was about, you mentioned planograms or, showing the merchant the vision for what you can do in the aisle.
Sure.
What's the best way to approach the merchant if you're doing something as significant as like an aisle reset or a completely new planogram? How do you approach that conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good point. What we've been doing is many times we'll develop and design retail opportunities for the merchant, whether it's a planogram or packaging or a cross promotion or a campaign. We'll develop and design and render or sketch those first, and then our client can show that to the merchant first before putting all the samples together, shipping them over to their innovation center, going face to face saves a lot. So what we'll do is we'll create a way to actually visually show, here's what it intends to look like in store first before you actually order all your samples, send everything in. So it's a big significant way of communicating, and what merchants are looking for first is how can I visually see what's going to be in the store first before we set it up.
Yeah, and I think based on what you're saying, I'm going to guess that the merchant appreciates that because they get a chance to feel heard and see themselves in the final output, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, they're more of a collaborator with you. You make them more a part of the process versus that big reveal at the end, where they're like, I might have done this a little different, but it's all sort of here, Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Creating the in-store experience visually first is really something that has been a significant change at retail that we have found with merchants.
Yeah, we've done that before for some clients where also in that pitch, maybe for the digital experience, where we do a little bit more, we have mocked up, okay, well, you're actually sort of missing this product category, and here's where we think it would fit into your website. Here's what a landing page would look like where we could talk about this product or this product family. Here's a whole campaign, like an out-of-the-box campaign that, we have assets mocked up, like it's just ready to go. Here you go, Ferguson, here you go, Lowe's, just activate, right? And that's a way that I think you can help, with the consistency in the experience too. Doing it when you're doing it, the mock-up for in the aisle, doing that mock-up for in the online too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes when you're doing these things, what we have found is that sometimes the merchant's like, I didn't even realize you were in this category. I didn't even really realize that you have this product or opportunity to get it on the shelf. So it could even bring more of an opportunity to yourself that you didn't even know, whether it's in this existing category or the merchant has somebody else in another category that you might be able to get.
Let's talk about other categories,
Sure.
Right? And attachment sales or how you, pitch yourself into other areas of the store where you may have be associated with products. How do you know where else to go within big box to maybe expand your footprint beyond the aisle? Because that's another great way to take share.
Absolutely. So many times during promotional or seasonal campaigns, a lot of times the retailer or merchant would want you to see a product, and then when you see that product, you can navigate back to the category. So, I didn't realize, here's a paint, you look at the paint, and then you navigate back to the paint category with the opportunity or the merchant's opportunity to build the basket size or attachments to increase that to buy other things. So you could buy paint, and you could buy paint brushes, and you can buy drop cloths and everything.
Tape and all the good stuff.
Tape and whatever else you need.
Yeah, cool. So does that bring another merchant into the equation then? Are you talking to essentially two merchants then because you have both the associated aisle and your core aisle? Do you have to pitch two, or do you pitch one and they bring it internally? What do you do to really understand that?
It sometimes really depends on the retailer and the category. Some categories you have a combination, some categories separate the merchants, and you have to have an agreement of both merchants, but really just depends on retail specific.
Okay. Yeah, certainly one merchant's enough, so two, two or more, yeah. Understanding them, building that relationship, getting the trust, but I mean, certainly the deeper you can get in the store and the more relationships you can have, those merchants do move around, and the more exposure and the deeper relationships with multiple people can benefit.
Yeah, the more you can be interactive in your category and actually see things that are not in your category that can help increase sales in your category is always a plus.
So let's talk a bit about sustainability, because I do think we've talked a lot about the merchant and quite a bit about the aisle, but sustainability, it's been really interesting this year to see how it's moved from something where people sort of, oh, yeah, we have sustainable features or, but we don't really lead with those, to people leading with them and consumers really be willing to pay for them too.
Right,
So
right.
how does that impact, what does sustainability look like in big box?
Sustainability is something that's been category driven, and as we all know now, it's very significant. There are many times where you have a sustainable product that you're not sure you're going to be able to release it to the merchant or retail because you think it might be more expensive, twice the price. But many of the retailers have, you can see, when they report their numbers too, that there's significantly focusing on putting a percentage of their sales or percentage of their merchandising towards sustainable products. And lots of times when you bring a sustainable product to the merchant, a lot of times they're like, when can I have it? Where can I get it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of the interest from our clients is being driven by the retailers asking for it, and everyone's sort of moving beyond, basic ESG, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 sort of things into product feature benefits. But, those scopes shouldn't be ignored. I mean, when you go to pitch your merchant and you go to talk to them about your differentiators, they're going to want to know your details about your supply chain, your manufacturing process, your carbon emissions, your use of renewable energy.
Right.
So I would say if there's anyone here that isn't thinking about how you capture that data right now, how, and how you build a story around it, should really start looking into what are our numbers, and then the next phase is what are the product sustainability feature benefits, right?
Yeah.
But this is also really a dicey area because there's a lot of people trying to make sure that there isn't another round of greenwashing and that these claims are real. So there's people out there looking for lawsuits to go against people who are not. So, I mean, key is getting third-party testing done, right?
Yep. Yeah, and you make a really good point. We have a client, another case study where they have a soy-based driveway sealer, and they've had that formula for almost 13 years. And they wanted to create another avenue, another channel of revenue. And we helped them develop and design the brand and the merchandising and pitched it to the merchant. And the next thing you know, they're in, one of these big box retail stores with the product, creating revenue in another area. Even though it was 2 or 3 times the price, it's twice the coverage, so you're using less, and it's a green product that nobody else in the category has. So it's really been a very big win. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where that would get adopted in the aisle, like, right away, because the commitment that all these big box retailers have made in their own corporate initiatives to support these, to support sustainability is real. I mean, they owe it to their investors. They're being measured and monitored, and their market value is increasingly being valued based on their sustainability numbers, and so they need partners and brands that can deliver on that. So, if you've been downplaying or slow rolling your sustainability messaging and you have something real, like, bring that forward,
Some of the manufacturers as well that have the sustainable products are also, their products are being used to actually build the retailer, right? So they could be used in the parking lot. They could be used in their building. Some of the sustainable product is already being used. So that is an interesting place where, now it's going to retail and going direct, which is really great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we've gotten any questions yet in the chat, but certainly if you have any, you could put them in now. I'll give it a second. I have endless questions for Randy, so just leaning over and looking at my monitor. So if you're a marketer and you're going in and you're talking to a merchant who is a procurement person, how do you get the idea of the value of branding across to them? Does it have to be visual, like what we were talking about? Are there ways, have you seen brands actually apply a monetary value to what a strong brand means to that retailer?
Yeah, I mean, we have, whether it's the online and in store, it could be a brand that is involved in the community through sustainability. So that, there are various ways of which brands are doing that with merchants. But, a lot of times there are some merchants at retail that are just looking at the numbers and wanting inventory turns, and this is how it is. And then it really depends on the category and other things with, with brand that way.
Yeah, I think sort of in our experience, the merchant intrinsically understands the value of a brand, but they're quickly looking for how you monetize it, right? So they want those really big brands in the aisle, but then they're also going to be asking you for things like exclusivity on new product launches, or they're going to ask you to exclusivity to certain products entirely, or your brand entirely. And so I think you really have to go in, if you're talking about a brand and the value of the brand and what it would bring into the aisle, you always have to think about that like give and take that you're willing to have with the merchant. Like, what are you willing to give them and what do they want to take from you?
Yeah,
you know, and
right.
you need to think through that, or you're going to end up in a situation. We've seen it with clients before they worked with us, where they did things to maybe not think far enough ahead into the decisions that we're making about opening up new distribution and the impact that it would have on their existing relationships, and then getting kicked out, getting put like on punishment, getting kicked out of 300 stores, or things like that,
There's been some ways too that some of our clients have been able to move away from that, as they've given retail specific brands only for them. And then they've given other brands. So, for a specific period of time, this is the brand that goes to you. And then, they have brands that go to the other parts of retail as well.
Yeah, it is, and I think the other thing you have to do when you're thinking about how you approach the merchant with the story, and this is where I think marketing can help a lot. I mean, I think the sales team, they're great. They have you probably feel really excited about the story that they have to tell, but telling it so they don't sort of like show up and throw up with all the wonderful things that your organization is doing.
Yeah.
Marketing can really help your sales organization put together a tight, clean narrative that tells the story with the level of information that the merchant is looking for versus every single thing. Some of those things you could maybe if they ask questions about them, great, but like, what do they really need to know?
Right.
And getting that out there.
And that's a good case in point too. Sometimes you have limited time with the merchant. You have all of this stuff that you're bringing in your pitch and you couldn't get through all of it. So you have to really tighten up your retail pitch deck, or what you want to be able to communicate to the merchant in a short period of time. So sometimes less is more, but just making sure you have those key things that he or she, the merchant, is looking for.
And I would say walk your aisle often, right?
Walk it often.
Yeah.
Yes. Saturdays, Sundays.
You'll find Randy there.
You'll
He's
find
always
me
there. Yeah. Omnipresent in all big box retail.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
I'm going to do one last check for questions, but it doesn't seem like there's anything in the QA. So we really do appreciate everyone who attended today. And, we're going to be sending out a recording of this to all of you. So if there were people in your organization that weren't able to make it that you think would find value, please do send it along. And if you have other things that you have questions about that you wanted to ask, more one-on-one, we're here for you too.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining. Thanks for joining.
Yes, thank you for having me.
It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.